Hello. Hey. So, yeah, the title of this presentation is Ready Player One, but it is for catchy name reasons. What I'm actually going to be talking about is not only Ron, but the context of the Ronin network related to where we are headed in the future, and that's a part of the entire kind of Sky Mavis ecosystem and the Mavis Hub. So I firmly believe that to understand the future, we need to first understand the past, like where did we come from as a team, and why do these decisions that we make sense at all? So if we go back to, all right, let's see, the beginning. Sky Mavis history, the first time we actually deployed NFTs was in February 2018. Like that's the main deployment date for some of these assets. Now this is actually NFT history. It's so early, and a lot of people actually don't really recognize this because we've gone through several changes, we've shifted blockchains, but the history for some of these assets, especially Origin Axes, Mystic Axes, they are truly, truly legacy. And the team as well, has gone through many, many changes. This picture that you can see on the screen right now is from mid-2019. We were just about to release the Axie Classic game. It is from a startup school that we were just graduating from in Vietnam. I think we had at the time maybe 15 people in the team. So if you fast forward to today, we are now over 185 people in Sky Mavis. Yeah. And of course, all of these people in the team, they are building many, many different things, right? We have various teams that are focused on, for example, Axie Infinity, the main Origin game, the Kingdoms game, and of course, helping out on the Builders program, but also when it comes to the Axie Infinity, kind of the infrastructure that's powering it all. Of course, Ronin network itself. But the journey that took us here is, of course, Axie Infinity. That's our main priority as we have been building this entire ecosystem, right? So what we saw is that Axie Infinity evolved from just this simple game, where we started out that people could very easily, the vision was always play a game, learn about crypto, blockchain, and truly own your digital assets. And last year, we started seeing that it turned into something totally different. The narrative kind of shifted. It became a lot about earning, right? And that's exciting for many people, but we also need to make sure that we, from a Sky Mavis perspective, we're true to our roots. And over time, as we were developing Axie, one problem that we always faced is that, blockchain, how much information are you actually going to be putting on a blockchain? And from a technical standpoint, a lot of this is actually about how much bandwidth is available on some of these blockchains. Right, we started on Ethereum since the very, very early beginning, and we quickly realized that you can't have every single transaction on Ethereum. And I think here is what maybe some people don't fully understand, that when you are using a blockchain, such as Ethereum, you're basically putting transactions on a shared computer where you can basically compare it to bandwidth. So back in the day, when we started with the internet, we used to have just normal kind of, before we had cable modems, we have ISDN, right? You couldn't actually have as many transactions. You couldn't communicate with the internet in the same way that you can do today. You couldn't do any sort of streaming. And this is basically where we are today when it comes to blockchain capacity. Basically, this is called block space. The block space on some of these blockchains that are truly decentralized, that are valuable, it's incredibly, incredibly valuable. And we realized this pretty early in our journey. So when we look at our tech journey, now some of you guys who came out in 2021, you might not actually realize this, but between Ethereum, we actually had a stopping point, which was called Loom Network. And that is where we deployed a big part of our land infrastructure in the beginning. And the reason for that is we trusted those guys. They said that they understood our problems, and they said that they know what blockchain game developers need. It sounds very familiar to where we are today, actually, because a lot of blockchains are telling game developers that this is the problem that you guys are going to be facing. This is what we can solve for you guys. But it turned out that it's very hard for people who are not game developers to actually know what game developers really need. So that's kind of what we figured out, and why we made the Ronin network. And what we started seeing after we deployed a big part of our infrastructure on Ronin network was just how much the impact could be. All right, so some of the metrics here I think is actually worth looking at, right? Because looking at the broader NFT space, Axie Infinity is the absolute most successful NFT collection of all time. And this is not only from like a volume perspective, we're also talking about unique buyers and unique owners of Axies themselves, right? And I think a lot of the broader crypto space oftentimes don't even realize how many people have actually interacted with Axie Infinity smart contracts in general, and how many of these players actually don't even have never even had any bank account before. So we did some initial research, and it turned out that 50% of Axie Infinity players have never even had any crypto before, and 25% of them have never even had a bank account before. And these are very, very crazy numbers, and I think that really sets the stage for how we see the future of this industry. So going a little bit back again, I'm going to show you guys some very, very early mind maps of the vision that we outlined. So I know this is a little bit chaotic, but ideally you can see what was being outlined, right? We wanted to make an entire ecosystem. We wanted to make a Sky Mavis chain, which now is of course called Ronin Network. And we had the idea of very many different things that we needed for the chain as well to add value to basically Axie. And we also wanted to provide these services for other games. And when you look at this, it seems it's a little bit scary, but this is not the final stage, because I made this mind map again last week, and yeah, as you can see, it's growing significantly. And I'm going to release this to you all a little bit later, so that you have a chance to actually go deeper into it. But the general idea here is that everything that we are making is about the Mavis Hub. The Mavis Hub is the central point, and basically, of course, app.axie and the marketplace, but the Mavis Hub is where people interact with our ecosystem, where they then interact with the Ronin network, which is a supporting tool. And here is the key. Where many other people look at the blockchain itself as being the absolute most important thing, we simply see it as a tool that enables benefits for users down the line. Now, there is the Ronin network that connected to the chain itself. There are validators. There are non-third-party Axie games, and it's also how we, as a Sky Mavis company, is adding value to this. But I will definitely release this to you guys later, so you can take a look at how this looks. So next step here, you already know a little bit about this, but it's mostly just to show you guys how the vision for the Mavis Hub is evolving over time, right? You have the marketplace, you have the communities, but what maybe isn't so clear is that the wallet, of course, is also going to be very, very connected into the Mavis Hub itself. So rather than having to click wallet extensions, you just have everything in there. And the same also goes for different games that we will be adding. And now we have already announced Raylight here as one of the first third-party games built by another studio. And we are, of course, working on many different studios as well. And I'm going to touch on some of the criteria that we have also a little bit later. But to visualize all of what we are making, this is the entire ecosystem at a very high level, right? We have games, starting with the Axie side, which is then supported by the entire distribution platform, which then again is supported by the infrastructure side, right? So everything is connected into a holistic vision for what we want to make. So you can kind of consider it like a super app. You have your wallet, and inside, you can access basically everything that is Axie Infinity and Ronin Network. What we like to call this, or kind of to summarize it all, is we also want to, of course, enable e-commerce down the line, and we started seeing this happen last year. Now, this is from the Philippines. And we think this is kind of an underrated thing for many, like how people look at the entire blockchain space, right? Because how cool is it not to be able to play a game, you earn something inside that game, and then eventually you can spend that for real food inside stores, right? This is the way I see the future of basically, blockchain gaming. So yeah, but of course, everything here connected is what we like to call Web3 that works. And we think Ronin Network is the ideal solution for this, because everything that we have taught us so far related to how limited block space is, right? We know that it's very, very, we need to be very careful with when we open it up. Because if we open it up too soon, the Ronin network itself, you're going to have all the similar problems that all of these other blockchains have, right? Many different types of scams. You would have, it's basically unusable in terms of sending transaction because the fee goes way too high. And in the end, our promise is to the Axie community first. We need to make sure that this truly works for Axie first, and then it can work for others down the line. And when it comes to other developers, right, when they come into the Ronin network, the first thing that they will see is, of course, we have all the crucial integrations that they might need. And that's also what we will be discussing now in the next panel here is, what are the main integrations that game developers need to actually make a great game? Right? They need fiat on-ramps. They need connected to exchanges. They need to be able to have different type of data analytics. They need, for example, community gaming. It's a perfect example of a tool which is amazing for other game developers to actually just simply connect to. And when you look at something like Ronin Network, everything that we have, every single tool should be very, very clearly delineated as a benefit to game developers first and foremost. And coming in the next 6 months on Ronin Network, we're targeting 6 independent games, and we have so far actually talked to over 200 different gaming studios. And this is quite a massive number. There are many, many different, very, very talented game developers in the blockchain gaming space. But what we are looking for is very, very targeted. We believe that the next billion users coming into the blockchain space will be coming in from mobile first. That's one of the absolute first criteria that we have. So the game needs to look beautiful on mobile, and then it also needs, of course, to work on PC, right? So people can stream it, so people can interact with it. But that's kind of one of the first criteria that we have. Other than that, we're looking for experienced founders who have, seen success before, either in Web 2 or if they have a great experience with building communities, because we know how important it is to build a community. One thing that we also are looking for is teams who haven't actually issued a token yet. And it's important because what we see is that, unfortunately, so many teams make mistakes by issuing fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens too soon. And when you do that, you develop a liability. And what I mean there is that you actually end up owing your community to do something, right? You need to fulfill all the expectations that you've set. And this is something that we have a lot of experience with Axie. And of course, a growth mindset. And when it comes to other game-specific applications, like Axie support tools, general NFT tools, these are very, very needed as well. But it has to go through a very significant application process. Because one of the things that we don't want is, of course, that people who come into the ecosystem, they are scammers. Because the security aspect here is very, very important. Because when we are, for example, having the Mavis Hub, one of the worst things that can happen is that we endorse a game, people download that game, and then they get scammed. It's the absolute worst thing that can happen. And that is our responsibility as a team to make sure that they aren't. So yeah, but that's not all. When we're looking at the long-term plans for the Ronin network itself, of course, we have a roadmap. We've had it for a long time, but we have never really announced it because it's kind of hard for people to see, where does the Ronin network fit inside the entire crypto ecosystem, right? Is it a side chain? Is it a layer 2 solution? What we actually see is that, Ronin network is more akin to a fully independent blockchain network right now than, many, many other chains itself. If theoretically Ethereum was to go down, Ronin network would still function today as it is. So we have very clearly delineated phases where we're almost finished with phase 1. we have a couple of more validators that will potentially be joining us. And now, after that, kind of the fun begins. Delegated proof of stake is coming very, very shortly. And then also means that we will be open sourcing the Ronin network so that people can, of course, see the code base. And then staking. I know a lot of people are very focused on that, right? Yeah. So staking is also coming. And that also means that not only the validators will be able to stake, but also users will be able to stake. And the last point here for phase 3 is, we know that Ronin network needs to scale. Like, we can't be in the same, sandbox that we have been operating in. But our thesis from a Sky Mavis perspective has always been that we need to implement scaling solutions or blockchain solutions that have been battle tested. And that's really the key. Because when we look out at the Ethereum ecosystem right now, there are all of these amazing solutions that seem perfect, right? They're scaling the blockchain. But in reality, they are not battle tested for the millions of users, the hundreds of millions of users that we are aiming for in Axie Infinity. And then for phase 4, of course, we need to come to a state where basically anyone can deploy smart contracts, where anyone can validate the blockchain, and where it's fully decentralized. So this is the roadmap for Ronin Network as announced today. Yeah, thank you. I do also have, I also want to shout out to the validator group that we have gathered. Like, these are our trusted partners who we will be working with for the foreseeable future. But I have an announcement today that we are being joined by an 18th validator, and this is a pretty big one. So Google is joining the Ronin network as a validator. And this has been in the works for, I would say 12 to 18 months, but we've been talking to them. Because we are working with Google, and Google Cloud specifically, for a long time, right? They are helping us when it comes to the infrastructure of the game. And they're also helping out also from a security point of view. We're using them, they're helping us out. And they also have the same beliefs that we have when it comes to open sourcing things, right? Android, open source, and the same also comes for Ronin Network. So very excited to announce that Google will be joining as a validator. I think they're actually they are actually working on getting them onboarded right at this second. So yeah, that's it for me today. And then we have another short post before we be joined by StableNode and Kathleen to talk a little bit more about what's next for Ronin as well. So thank you.